Today, I'm going to share with you guys the best open field PvP armies in Rise of Kingdoms in 2026 because I can't believe it, but we haven't talked about the best open field pairs here on the channel since October of 2025, which is insane, and a lot has changed over the last couple of months. Of course, we did just get Sun Tzu Prime in the game, so there's a lot to talk about. But before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. And of course, I am a sponsored partner creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content like this, subscribe down below and drop a thumbs up while you're down there. It really helps out the channel. We are so close to 95,000, and that's just one milestone on the way to 100k, ladies and gentlemen. But with that out of the way, let's jump right in here. Tiger came to say hi. Every time that I start recording, she comes up here now because she thinks she's gonna get treats or something, but I don't know. Is Tiger a good girl? I'm not sure if she deserves treats or not. Also, your head's a little stinky, Tiger. You got to go ahead and you got to give yourself a bath. Let's just jump right into the tier maker. Now, I want you guys to use the chapters down below to jump to the part of the video that you care the most about. And what we're going to do in this video is we're actually going to start with the two best armies in Rise of Kingdoms right now. I don't think this is something that I've ever done in one of these videos before, but one of the things that I noticed as a content creator is that I get a lot of questions from people that are free-to-play players. They've only been playing the game for less than 2 years, and they simply do not have what it takes to run 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 armies in the open field, and they only run 2. They're doing the best that they can, and so I figured, hey, I'm just gonna meet my audience where y'all are at. Okay, I know a lot of you this doesn't apply, but some of you it does. You're only running 2 armies. So what are the 2 best armies for open field PvP in Rise of Kingdoms right now? Well, it's pretty straightforward. We have an Emperor Qin March and we have a Sun Tzu Prime March. This is one Archer March and one Infantry March. And who are we going to pair here? Okay, well, for the archers, you're either going to pair with Yi Seong-gye or you're going to pair with Zhuge Liang. Now, when you pair with Yi Seong-gye, you have to understand that he needs to be expertise to get the maximum amount of damage and to get the circular AoE. Okay, and then you also need to come into the museum to grab the tier 3 upgrade for Yi Seong-gye. That gives him 20% defense and 12% extra skill damage. And if you do go ahead and do the Yi Seong-gye pairing with Emperor Qin, just understand that this is a maximum damage output march. But if you do the Zhuge Liang, this is slightly less damage, but there is a really strong debuff on the active skill of Zhuge Liang, which means your other armies, whether it's your armies or your allies, are going to perform a little bit better in the open field. So Zhuge Liang is a bit more of a balanced approach here, especially because he also has a little bit more tanky stats compared to just the 20% defense and chance for attack here. The other advantage that Zhuge Liang has is that you do not need to max him to have him be really good in the field. Now, you should max him. He's very good at expertise, but you can use him along the way. Whereas with YSG, before he gets the expertise, he doesn't have the circle AoE. He doesn't have max damage on the active skill. It's only 1400. So definitely a downside to YSG, whereas Zhuge Liang pretty good at 5511, 5551, 5515, whatever it ends up being. So keep that in mind. But whichever of these two you go with, the more well-rounded balanced approach or the maximum damage approach, this is going to be one of your 2 armies. The second army is of course infantry, and you've got a couple of options with infantry as well. Probably the safest bet is to just run the Bai Qi. Okay, this is going to be a really nice combination of a ton of AoE damage, lots of attack. You also have some tankiness. Like, this is a great commander pairing, and you're going to love everything about this. The other route you could go would be a Liu Che secondary, and of course Liu Che does not hit as hard as Bai Qi. It's just a little bit worse, and also he doesn't have as much attack as Bai Qi, but he is a little bit tankier. Not only does he have the 20% defense, but he also reduces skill damage taken by 20%, which a lot of people forget, and you're going to take a lot of skill damage from the Emperor Qins out on the field. Plus, you also have a nice debuff on the 4th skill, and the expertise is combo attacks with rage. So you have a nice rage engine on top of the lower rage requirement of Sun Tzu Prime, and all of a sudden the Liu Che secondary is hitting almost as hard as Bai Qi, but is slightly more tanky. So again, we find ourselves in a situation where the Liu Che is maybe a little bit more of a well-rounded approach, but Bai Qi is the max damage approach. Okay, so you've got 2 different options. You have the more well-rounded approach or the max damage approach. You guys can decide which one you want to go with, and that's going to be it for the 2 army lineup. Okay, so if you're only running 2, that's what you want to do. Let's move on to your 3rd pair. Okay, now if you're going to be running 3 armies in the open field, most likely you're going to want to go with one of each troop type. I know that I did make a video a few months ago talking about, you know, if you're free to play, you actually can run maybe 2 of a specific troop type to save on crystal tech. If you want more information about that, check out that video on the channel. But let's assume you are going to build your account towards having at least one of each troop type type, because I mean, let's face it, the meta is constantly evolving in Rise of Kingdoms, and sometimes, like in the case of when Emperor Qin comes around, that's the best army, right? And so if you don't have an archer set, you just lose the best commander, right? Now we've got Sun Tzu Prime, and eventually cavalry are going to get their Emperor Qin power level commander. By the way, it is the year of the horse right now in the, I think, Chinese zodiac. So year of the horse. Are we getting a powerful cavalry commander this year? I think probably. Okay, all that to say, I think most players are going to be building a one of each troop type at some point, and I think that is a solid strategy that has been tried and true. So who are you going to build for your cavalry march? Well, there are two different options that you can pick from, okay? And of those two different options, Achilles is in both of them. And really, we've got, again, the all damage approach, where you do the Arthur primary with Achilles secondary. This is double AoE, and it is just an insane amount of DPS. Now, it's a little bit squishy, so you got to be careful with that, but unfortunately for cavalry, a lot of their marches are super squishy right now in the current meta. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about that later in the video, but if you want max damage, this is the pair that you're going to go with. Super good synergy. Everything about this pair just lines up. You have to do the Arthur primary because he's only combo damage as primary, and I guess I should sort of preface all of this by saying that you're going to run combo delta formation with calves, and you're going to run the smite damage pincer formation with infantry, and then you're going to run the wedge formation skill damage for archers. Okay, so keep that in mind unless I say otherwise. That is the current meta. The other option that you could go with here is, instead of the Arthur, you could run the Gang Gamchan. Now, the thing with Gang Gamchan is he is a single target damage commander, which is unfortunate, but he's actually very tanky, which kind of solves the problem that cavalry have right now in the open field, and he does it in a very unique way of providing healing that does not cause you to get more severely wounded units. So this is like the one commander in the entire game with healing that's actually really good. There's basically no downside at all. He's just tanky. He will get you great reports. Now, there is one main pairing here, and that is of course Gang Gamchan with Achilles. You can run either primary. It honestly isn't that big of a difference. You're going to get more healing out of the Gang Gamchan primary, but you are going to deal less damage with Gang Gamchan primary, because there is inevitably going to be times where you are going in and out of battle and you are retreating after only one commander pops their active skill. That's just the name of the game. You just, sometimes you can't overextend, you have to retreat, and only one commander pops. In that case, you're going to want it to be your Achilles. For me personally, in my last KVK, I ran Achilles primary. It performed very well. So really there's no requirement here, in the same way that, for example, with Hua with Joan, you needed to run Hua primary, right? Because his active skill is cut in half if he's secondary. Same thing with like rage requirement and everything like that. Gang Gamchan does not have any of those downsides. The only downside of running him as secondary is that you just get less healing, so it's a little bit of a trade-off, but you still can do it. Okay, I think a lot of cav players have that reflex of like, oh, the single target damage commander, like he's got to be the primary, and that's just not the case here. So just keep that in mind. Okay, if I were to build a single cavalry march, I would probably go the all damage route, where you do the Arthur with the Achilles, but there is something to be said about being a little bit more tanky there, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so this is the best 3 army lineup in Rise of Kingdoms right now. What happens if you want to push this to 4 armies, right? What would the 4th army look like? Personally, I think the best 4 army lineup has 1 cav, 1 archer, and 2 infantry. Infantry just got Sun Tzu Prime, so of course they have the latest new commanders in the game, and so I think it's completely fair that they are just a little bit ahead of the other troop types. Now, of course, when we get the new archers, which will probably land in April, I made an entire video about that. Check that out if you want to know what I think is coming for archers, because you might want to be prepared for that. But right now, I think you're going to run 2 infantry armies. Okay, so if you are going to do that, how are you going to split these up? Well, I think the easiest thing to do would be to just slap William Wallace behind Bai Qi and just run that, right? Just run the Sun Tzu Prime with Liu Che and then Bai Qi with William Wallace, and you are good to go. I think that is totally fair. Now, if you are a Giga Whale who has Ivar the Boneless, and you have iconic tier 5 special talented Horn of Fury and Ring of Doom, and you have like the best of the best when it comes to infantry, then that is when you can consider running Ivar the Boneless. You're going to put him as secondary to your Sun Tzu Prime, and then you're going to just bench the William Wallace, and this is how you're going to run the 2 infantry. Now, keep in mind, I made an entire video talking about this when it comes to infantry specifically, so check that out. It's a very recent video. I would not recommend investing in Ivar for this purpose. It's just, if you are a rally leader, you have him already, you could try running this combination, but but you really do need the best of the best. And if you do have the best of the best, you're going to find that the AoE on Ivar hits really hard. We've got rage engines on both of these commanders, and really she's just a vanilla beat stick. It's just AoE smite damage and it just pops off. It just hits really hard, but there's very few players who are actually going to make that work. So with that being said, again, I think the safest route would be to do something like this, or even something like this if you want to turn your William Wallace into an AoE commander and you don't want to break up your Bai Qi with Liu Che. Those are perfectly good options as well. Now let's say you want to run 4 armies, but you are going to run 2 cavalry. Okay, then that changes things a little bit here. Of course, we are going to bench the William Wallace once again, and running 2 cavalry means that you will have to split up your Achilles with Arthur. There's really no other way around that, and I think the best way to run this, right, again, the primary here, you could decide whichever you prefer, but the best way to run this is going to be something like the Hector secondary. Okay, the thing with Hector is his damage output is not very high, but he just makes your Arthur last longer. And you know, throughout the last year, a lot of players have been running things like William behind Arthur, or something like Philip behind Arthur, and I think those were really good sort of transitionary options. But the problem is that these are just so absolutely squishy that it's kind of a joke at this point. Like, they actually just die immediately. They're gonna be faster than everything on the field except for maybe your Achilles Gang Gamchan, but there's actually tankiness here, whereas there's literally zero tankiness on this march at all. This is a napkin made of paper, right? Like there's it blows away in the wind. That's it. So yes, you can get good reports with it if you are instant proc hitting correctly, but most of you will not be. I'm just here to tell you that's probably not the experience you're going to be having. I know a lot of Giga Whales run one of these, right? But you're not them. Okay, I'm not them, just to be clear. Okay, so like, you can try this still. People do use this, whether it's, you know, the Philip or the William, but I'm warning you, for regular average players, free to play, low spend, and even medium spend, like, these will just die. So just be prepared for that. It's just gonna die. That's why a lot of people are turning to Hector now, because he is decent single target down the active skill, but he's a little bit tankier than these other options, right? And he's got the combo damage and everything, so the synergy there just works. If you do not have the Hector, the other thing that you could do is run the primary with the King Arthur secondary. This of course does require that you still have a cavalry wedge set, so this is skill damage. Okay, and this is kind of, I mean, it's kind of like running the Gang Gamchan with the Achilles, just worse in pretty much every way. The King Arthur does still hit really hard here, just to be very clear, but the problem is the Hua is very outdated. He is a little tankier than something like the William or something like the Philip, right? That's why we use him, but it's tough, right? It's tough to run this. Personally, in my last KVK, had I not already converted armaments, I probably would have run this combo for me, right? Like, this would have been the way I would have gone, but I just didn't have the armaments to support this because I had already converted them. So that is that. Hopefully with the next cavalry release, which will probably come sometime in the fall of this year, right? Because we're going to get archers, then we're going to get the range with leadership, then we're going to get cavalry again. When that comes around, hopefully we have a great pairing for King Arthur that way. But until then, you've got a couple of different options here. I know this is looking kind of messy, but that's how I would run the 2 cavalry lineup. Okay, with that being said, moving on to the best 5 army lineup. Well, in that case, you're going to just run the 2 infantry, 2 cavalry, 1 archer. That is the way to go, in my opinion, when you're running 5 in 2026. Okay, so what that would look like would be something like this, and then something like this. Okay, so whether you're running, you know, that, or you're running like that, or you're running that, those are the different options that you have for the infantry, like I just mentioned before. So you can decide which way you want to go for you, but I'm gonna leave it like this. Okay, so there's not much else to say here for the 5 army lineup. I feel like we just explained all of this. Okay, but then when you push to 6 pairs, what are you going to do here? Well, most likely you're going to be running another archer march. Unfortunately, archers right now are in a really tough spot because 2 of these commanders have 0 march speed, which makes them really kind of struggle. Okay, it makes them really kind of struggle, if we're being honest. But what you're going to have to do is pull your Zhuge Liang to another march. You run the YSG behind your Emperor Qin, because really this is kind of the only place you can run YSG right now, in my opinion. It's just obviously the best place, right? So you do that, and then who do you run with your Zhuge Liang? Well, you've got 2 options. You've got Philip, or you have the Hermann Prime. I know a lot of people, this is what I've seen from comments, right, on my channel. They say, oh well, if you run the Philip, it solves the march speed problem with Zhuge Liang. No, it does not. No, it doesn't. It's not even close. Philip has 20% march speed and when we look at Hermann Prime, he has 15% March speed, so it is a 5% March speed difference. The Zhuge Liang still has 0. Okay, so you're gonna move slightly faster with the Philip, and yes, you've got health over attack and defense, but it's a little bit less stats, right? So you have 35% health versus 20% attack, 20% defense. That's 40%. So there are trade-offs. Now, when we look at active skills, the active skill of Hermann is way better than the active skill of Philip. It's crazy how much better this actually is, because it's a half circle and it's actually dealing damage, and it's a stacking debuff that's going to make your other Archer March, your Emperor Qin, do more damage because you've got poison here. Okay, on top of that, you have the AoE skill damage bonus, so you're actually going to hit harder with this March with your Zhuge Liang. You also have the defense debuff, but with the Philip, of course, you get 30% all damage. Okay, so a little bit of a trade-off there. I know a lot of people like the Philip because he's slightly faster and you get the instant proc with the rage reduction. The Hermann's going to hit harder, you're just going to deal more damage, and you've got the poison stacks, so it's a bit of a trade-off, and you're a little bit slower, right? All that being said, however, let's just be very clear here. Your second Archer March is going to be probably your worst March out of all these by quite a bit. Whether you pick the Hermann or you pick the Philip, one might be a micro optimization over the other depending on your situation, but at the end of the day, this 6th army is going to be your worst performing March. But if you need to run 6 to put a ton of field pressure on, and you've got the equipment and armaments for 2 archers as well as 2 cavs and 2 infantry, this would be the way that you would do that. Okay, from there, let's talk about the best 7 army lineup. Okay, now the first thing that we have to touch on, of course, is siege. We've got Gajah, we've got Cordoba. This March is not what it once was, unless you're in very specific situations where there's a massive open field fight, and that fight is very concentrated, it's not moving very much, and you can snipe that from a distance that is safe. So whether you're on the other side of a river or something like that, there are some instances where the ranged marches will still perform very, very, very well. So if you have a ranged army and you're looking to run 7, I think this is one way that you could do that. Just keep in mind that there are still some instances where the field's moving a ton and this will literally do nothing. Okay, so you kind of have to read the room to see if the siege march will make any sense at all. Now let's assume that you don't have a siege march, or your current kvk is such that you just can't run it, right? Like, it's just not going to be feasible. What would you do in that case? Okay, well, let's talk about 3 infantry. All right, one thing that you could do for infantry, you know, in this case, you probably want the Ivar at this point. If you're running 3 infantry and you're a 7 army player, you probably want the Ivar. Let's assume that you've got these pairs here. One thing you could do would be obviously running the Scipio behind the Ragnar Prime. This is, you know, similar to the Zhuge Liang march, like Zhuge Liang Hermann. This is just slow. It's just very slow. It is double AoE, very tanky, tons of synergy here. It's like insane how good this march actually is if the march speed is not a concern, but in 2026 march speed is always a concern. So unfortunately, we definitely are the golden days of the skill damage infantry are certainly behind us. Very unfortunate for infantry players, but if you're running 7, this might just be the easiest thing that you can run if you run 3 infantry. If you do not want to run this army, then you do still have some other options. You probably need Ivar. Okay, so keep that in mind. You're going to run this, and then with your Liu Che, you're going to run Alexander the Great or Philip, depending on where your Philip actually is. That's going to be kind of the best way to run that. And one other option that you could do if you don't have the Ivar is you could do something like this. You run this as the 2 lineup, and then you run the Ragnar Scipio, and that's how you're going to run that. There's a couple options for infantry. You can watch my latest infantry guide if you want me to go a little bit more in depth. What happens if you want to run 3 cavalry? Okay, because 3 cavalry is definitely an option here, but it is a little bit worse than the 3 infantry in my opinion. And one really interesting pair that a lot of people talk about is running the Attila with the David. Now this is kind of like with Ivar the Boneless. Like, this is something that you're only going to do if your account is built for running cav rally or garrisons, and you are just, everything is iconic tier 5, everything is crit, everything is, you've got a perfect cav account. Okay, if that's the case, you can try to run this. David is literally just an AoE beat stick. That's really, in the open field, that's all he's doing, right? It's just dealing damage. He's got a strong 3 target combo damage AoE. He's got a cleanse. He's got 35% defense on the field, and whenever you use an active skill while attacking a troop on the map, the target takes up to 40% more combo attack damage for 3 seconds with a 5-second cooldown. And that's really it for the open field, right? That's all he's doing. So keep that in mind. Very generic, very vanilla beat stick. I would not invest in him for open fielding. It's just, if you have him, you can try to run this with the Attila. Attila is still something that we see tanky occasionally on the open field, but he does kind of have universal appeal when it comes to a lot of commanders, especially in KVKs where you can change the troop type, right? Like you can run Attila with Liu Che when you convert Liu Che to cavalry and then you're popping off, right? Like there's a lot you could do with Attila, but just keep in mind he is technically still a conquering commander, right? He's still for rally. So if you look at the second skill, this doesn't do anything in the open field. There's nothing here for you. You're a little light on stats these days, which is unfortunate, but still got 15% march speed and hits pretty hard with the attack. And with combo damage in the game, you're going to pop this even more than you would before, although you do have a long cooldown and you can't be silenced. Not that you're going to silence very much, but also you deal 20% more normal damage when the units are under 50%, which again, of course, with combo damage works really well. Okay, so on top of that too, 50% march speed when leaving combat is surprisingly good these days. So even though he only has 15%, like you're going to be able to run away when you want to run away. So good stuff there from Attila all around. And he gets even more stats with his museum relic. Okay, so 5% cav defense, 3% skill damage taken reduction. So there's certainly a lot to love here if you, again, you're running a third cavalry march, but just keep in mind this will still be slower than your other cavs, so I would just be careful. Of course, if you are running the Hua, then you still could run the Hua with Joan. This is again probably going to be your worst performing march, if not your Zhuge Liang here. But if you're running 7 armies, then you're going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel to put together as many armies as you can, and you're going to find yourself possibly with a Hua Joan. Really, it's hard to recommend this at this point in 2026. So if push came to shove and I was forced to give you guys a 7 army lineup that is the best in the game, it would either be the siege in instances where you actually can use them, and in instances where you cannot use them, it would be infantry, whether it's the Ragnar Scipio or it's with the Liu Che, Alex, or Philip. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Those are going to be the ones that I would mainly point you towards. Below that would be cavalry, and then below that would be archers. We're not even, and this might be controversial, we're not really even going to talk about 3 archers because there's just not a good way to run 3 archers right now, unfortunately, but that will probably change in April. Okay, so when we get and I'm saying April as a hypothetical, we could get new archers sooner or later than that. April is kind of the average point, right? Whenever we get the next archers, then you might be able to run 3 archers a bit more effectively, and that would be that. If you're kind of forced to do 3 archers because that's how you have your equipment built, then you would be looking at something like either Ashurbanipal or something like Nebu. Now the thing with Nebu is he doesn't hit as hard as Ashurbanipal, but his march speed is universal, which is kind of nice actually, and he did just get a decent relic. Okay, so 15% archer attack and 10% normal damage taken reduction, which is very, very good right now considering we've got a lot of combo damage, we've got a lot of smite damage on the board. Okay, so you're going to be more tanky against all that stuff, and you're going to be hitting slightly harder with that archer attack. So 5-5-1-5, and you've got most of what you need out of Nebu, right? Like his expertise, yes, you hit harder with the active skill, but a majority of what you want here is just the AoE, right? So we have the 30% defense plus 15% attack, 15% march speed, 10% normal damage taken reduction, 15% more damage, and you have a chance to reduce the target's rage. Okay, so I would be looking at something like this, like Nebu or Ashurbanipal with Hermann Prime, something like that. Of course, you've got Shajar that you could throw in the mix here if you wanted to run like Emperor Qin Shajar, and then move this down here and run something like maybe this, and you run like that, right? That could be an option you could go, but again, at this point we are like really scraping the bottom of the barrel. I guess you could do this as well. Actually, now that I think about it, yeah, the Ashurbanipal is still probably going to be the better choice over the Nebu. Okay, really, I forgot that this is not part of the expertise. This is always there. So yeah, you're just going to deal more damage. Obviously the Nebu does now have slightly more stats, and his march speed is universal compared to this is only outside of territory, but you get the 20% skill damage bonus here, and you take 15% less normal damage, which you take 10% less on the relic of Nebu. So I mean, Nebu's relic just brings them like even closer, but I think Ashurbanipal might still be a little bit better, especially with expertise, right? If it's expertise, certainly you're going to run Ashurbanipal. So just want to throw that out there at the very end here. But again, guys, I would not run 3 archers pretty much no matter what at this point. That's just not what I would be doing. So I'm just going to put these here as your best options, and you guys can decide how you want to run that. But guys, with that being said, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, make sure you drop a thumbs up on it. It really does help out the channel a ton. Consider using the new hype feature, and you might think you're subscribed because you've seen a ton of my videos, but you're actually not. Double check down below. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.